This morning we welcome Teh Lip Kim, the Managing Director of Property Developer, Selangor Dredging Berhad. Kim, thank you for joining us. Let's kick off the discussion with your medium-term view of the property market and whether the market for high-end developments where you kind of are is at the tail end of the game.
Thank you for inviting me. We are at the high end of the market, I would say. And when you say whether we're the tail end of the property market,
Or the tail end of the rally for high-end developments, because that's where most of the plays have been in the last few years.
I would say that when we talk about prices, firstly I like to address prices. There's this thing about developers making massive amount of profits and all that, and
You mean that's not true?
And I would want to say that we make lots of money, but we do make, I would say, most developers do make a reasonable profit margin. But I would say that prices have gone up recently because of land prices. Land prices have also gone up in the last 3 to 4 years, and they've gone up about 80 to 100%. And also this has been coupled in the last 3 to 4 years by commodity prices going up. When we talk about commodity prices, we're talking about basically prices that go into the construction of the building. And these would be prices of steel, prices of concrete, prices of sand, prices of wires and bricks and all this. So all these prices have gone up. And that has resulted, I would say, in property prices going up. And when we talk about, I would say, with the next thing you talked about is whether we're at the tail end. I would say considerably, I would say if you compare ourselves to the ASEAN market, to Singapore, to Indonesia, to Hong Kong, we haven't gone up that much. So as a result of that, I would say we are playing a catching up game. Not so much that we've gone up. The prices have gone up is because of land, because of all these construction materials going up, but we're playing catching up game. And now we're relatively, I'd say, cheap.
Still relatively cheap. So to sum it up, you think that the high-end property game has got legs to go?
I would say that when the government implements all these grand plans that they're talking about, the ETP and the Greater KL plan, master plan, at the moment it's just been talk. It hasn't been implemented. And when they finally do start to implement it, I would say that the property market would still go up in Malaysia, provided foreigners come in.
You say if, you use the words if and you use the word provided. Is there do you get a sense that investors are having a wait and see approach to what's going on in terms of the transformation objectives in this part of the world?
There is a wait and see attitude from investors into Malaysia as to.
Do you talk about specifically in property, or do you talk specifically on the macro point of view?
I would say, I'm only in the property market, so I can only comment in the property market. Let's look at, I would say, compare Singapore to Malaysia. When a condominium is finished, for instance, in one of our projects, within a space of 2-3 weeks, we can find a tenant. In Malaysia, when a condominium is finished, some of the condominiums in KLCC as well, how many of it is rented out? What's the percentage?
That's right.
So that's why I'm talking about foreigners, and for us, we're lucky because we own Park 7. That's about 80-90% tenants. We can see some other
Park 7 in Singapore or
Park 7 here.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But around KLCC, there are lots of condominiums that are empty. At night we can see the number of lights that are being turned on.
Okay, so that's quite interesting. Do you feel the sands are shifting under your feet in Malaysia in terms of the transition, potential transition, if you like, of the political landscape?
What do you mean?
Well, elections are being mooted to be held within a year's time. 2012, I think, is the commonly held assertion.
And
Do you feel that the sands are shifting? Do you feel that investors are staying away from Malaysia for now, even though they are watching it very closely?
I feel that there has to be an economic stimulus in the things being said. It has to be done, and I'm not sure, whether people are staying away, waiting for the election or what. But I feel that I'm not sure, but I would say that they are definitely. I would say that things need to be implemented for us to be able to see a multiplier effect throughout the whole country.
In your annual report, 2010 annual report, Kim, the tone of your statement is quite cautious. You use the words "remain heedful," and you talked about how market movements have yet to stabilize, and you thought that the year ahead will still be challenging. This comes at a time when the property market was very buoyant. What's your frame of mind right now?
I still stand by basically that statement, what we mentioned. I suppose it's because of what I mentioned earlier that really a lot of the plans have yet to be implemented. Also, like you say, foreigners. I would say that we're still waiting for the election, and the current government needs to have a mandate. The current prime minister needs to have a mandate, and basically we are still. I'm still cautious, about the next 1-2 years. But
Okay.
I would say that I'm hopeful because, in spite of it yet to be implemented, we've done pretty well already. But it's really because the whole region have done well, and we're really catching up.
Okay, so
and we are relatively cheap.
Okay, so
Malaysia's
there's a sense
cheap.
that Malaysia has done well in spite of what's been happening because of the rest of the region.
Moved ahead of us.
Yeah, so a rising tide lifts all boats. Kim, you also, your frame of mind, does it lend itself to the reasons why you expanded to Singapore? You've got Grille there, you've got Gia there, you've got a couple of other pieces of land there. And Singapore is not an easy place to play ball in, right? In your part of in your industry. So, what's going on? Are you going more overseas now?
We started going to Singapore 3 to 4 years ago, with Jiao being our first project. Now we're onto our 4th project there. And the reason why we go there is because we feel that it's a developed country. It's easy to get approvals.
Okay, so the bureaucracy there is a lot shorter?
The bureaucracy is a lot shorter, and the certainty. When we buy a piece of land in Singapore at a specific area, we already know what is the plot ratio. Let's just say, and so do all the neighbors. I buy a piece of land in Grille, I know that my plot ratio is 2.8. So as a developer, I actually can calculate my return on investment immediately. And the neighbors also know that if they live next to this piece of land, it's 2.8. So that it doesn't lead to a lot of, I would say, uncertainty for everyone. You can develop, the neighbors actually know that there's going to be a high-rise building next to you. And basically, it's simple. You put in your approvals for certain things, you already know when you can get it out. There's a certain time frame that we can calculate. And I would say that when we buy a piece of land in Singapore from the S&P date, we know between 6 to 8 months, we can already start to launch.
So from the listed company perspective, from SDB's perspective, 5 years out, 10 years out, would you be doing a lot more stuff in Singapore and overseas, rather than in Malaysia? What can shareholders expect?
I would say that shareholders would expect return on. They would expect return. But for us, we are probably we're going to be a global player eventually. At the moment, we want to step to Singapore, and as you know, we already bought our first building in London, and we hope to do some refurbishment next in London.
That was nearly £10 million, but it was bought at subsidiary associate level. Was there a reason for that?
The reason is that, it's a new country. And we decided that we'll plant our seed in there first.
Okay, so you wanted to ring fence the potential
ring-fence
downside?
the downside, and at the same time, the reason why we also bought an investment property because we wanted to actually know what is the laws of the land. We need to know how the company act, the S&Ps, how they work. We need to find our accountants. We need to know, the taxation system, all this. So basically, we take things one step at a time. We don't want to jump in and do a huge greenfield because we've done it. We're going to be doing it in phases. First, we do investment property, then we do refurbishment, then maybe eventually we will do a greenfield. That means buy an empty piece of land like what we do here, and basically start building. But that we must take things one step at a time. Even in Singapore, what we did do was that the first project was a very small project. It was only 22 units. Then the next one,
You're talking about the London one? Or
no, even in Singapore.
Okay.
Yeah, the first project we did was only 22 units.
Okay.
Then the next one was 100 over units. Then now Okio is 100 over units. So basically, we need to take one step at a time. We don't want to jump in, doing something. We have to learn slowly.
So prudence is the order of the day.
Yeah.
You go in least risk, least downside first. So you've outlined Singapore, you've outlined the UK, London specifically. What other countries, or would you stay in those two regions for now?
For now, I would stay in those two regions because I haven't. Even though we've been in Singapore 3 to 4 years now, and this is our 4th project, we're going to be launching another one called Hijauan in Cavanagh, just off Orchard Road. We still have a lot to learn in Singapore.
Okay. So
and in London, we have to yet do a refurbishment project of some apartments.
Okay, so you've outlined the country dynamics of Malaysia. What about Singapore? How's demand there been like, and what kind of factors drive the conditions in that part of the world?
Singapore, like Hong Kong, is an island, so land is limited. And Singapore has got a very transparent corporate governance, and it's easy to do business in Singapore for us. It's easy for us basically to learn to do things in Singapore as I say a freshie going in there into a new country. It's easy to do business there. That's why we were attracted to going to Singapore.
That's from an administration perspective. What about at the demand level from the consumers and the buyers? What factors drive them to purchase or not to purchase your property?
Singapore is a financial hub, and really at the end of the day, when we go to Singapore, the demand is just there, because of the business they're doing. It's booming.
So there's lots of liquidity.
There's lots of liquidity in Singapore. There's lots of people visiting in Singapore, and in Singapore, I would say that in spite of recently they imposed the 16% sales tax in February, there was a huge drop in demand. But very soon after that, in the next 2 months, demand picked up by 30%.
Sales tax would penalize people who flip and speculate in property, but over the long term, will that tax diminish? Yeah,
that will diminish by a few percent every year, and basically depending on how long they hold that. That basically is just to discourage speculators.
So supply-demand issues that don't really play out because the demand is just outstripping supply. Is that right in Singapore?
Demand is outstripping supply in Singapore. I mean, and really at the end of the day, land is very expensive in Singapore.
And you can still make some kind of margin.
And we can make margin. That's because land prices continually go up in Singapore.
Okay, so the industry average for margins at the gross level in Malaysia is about 30%. In Singapore, what's that like?
10 to 15.
Okay, so it's still more of a proposition to do projects here from a financial perspective.
I wouldn't say for us. I would not say that our margins are 30 in Malaysia. Our margins are around 20.
Okay.
So really it's
Singapore.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Singapore is 10 to 15. But at the end of the day, in Singapore, in Singapore, basically there's always a demand for properties. It's matter whether we are able to hold the property. If we are able to hold the property, because the government releases land, and also when land goes out, it's always at a higher, they buy at a higher price and the cost is higher. So really at the end of the day, I would say that prices always go up in Singapore. Okay, just give you an idea. In Singapore, the land price as a proportion of the total construction cost, the land cost would be 70%, 70-80%.
Versus about 20-25
Yeah.
in Malaysia?
Versus 20-25 in Malaysia. So when we have something like this, if we can afford as a developer buy, and because if we can afford to buy the land in Singapore, then really we're able to cross the bridge to develop the piece of land. And in Singapore, if land costs keep on going up, then at the end of the day, it forms a total, and the price has to go up.
Of course.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to give an idea, the mark in Singapore, it's on Patterson Road. It's by SC Global. It's selling at 6,000 Sing dollars per square foot. Here in KLCC, yeah, people are talking about 1,800 to 2,000 ringgit per
So
square
roughly
foot.
about 800 Sing per square foot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So so basically,
It's
the
a different game. It's a
disparity,
different game. Yeah.
is
Okay.
different.
We are talking to Teh Lip Kim, the Managing Director of Malaysian property developer Selangor Dredging Berhad. Kim, you've been furiously buying shares from the open market. You've bolstered your personal holding in the company by some margin over the last few years. Let's talk about that after the break. We are talking to Teh Lip Kim, the Managing Director of property developer Selangor Dredging Berhad, on the Breakfast Grill today. Kim, we've been noticing that you've been buying shares from the open market, at least in the last 2 years. You've got 15% direct now, 40% indirect. That leaves you with quite a majority holding in Selangor Dredging. What's going on?
I just have confidence in my company. Really, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm helming the company. I just want to, I just have confidence. I mean, really nothing is going on, but I'm confident about the company that I'm running. And that's why I'm buying shares in this company.
Right. You've done a revaluation of your properties just recently, a couple months ago, completed. That's added 8.45 cents to your net assets per share value. Why have you done a revaluation? A lot of developers don't. A lot of companies with massive land banks don't. Why is Selangor Dredging done that?
We've done a revaluation because we have to. For fixed assets, we have to do it once every 5 years. So, by law, we've had to. An investment property.
So the last time you did a revaluation was 5 years ago?
That's for, I would say, fixed assets. That's 5 years ago for the hotel. And basically for investment property, we have to do it every year.
Okay.
That's under the new accounting standard.
Okay.
I mean, it's not, we've had to.
Right.
Yeah.
Recently as well, the news that Ong Leong Huat has plans to take OSK property off the board. The Lau family as well plans to take their AP Land off the board. What do you make of that in terms of the market valuing your companies adequately?
We haven't got plans at this point in time to privatize the company. And
I didn't ask you that, Jim asked you what you thought about.
What do I think about that? I mean,
well, the fact that markets don't give companies the valuation they think they deserve.
Well, I haven't really thought too much into that, to be honest. And I haven't really thought too much into that. I mean, to me, it's the same thing. Taking it private or taking it, leaving it public, I'm okay with that.
Is the listed sector for property developers are very crowded? Do you have difficulty getting some kind of visibility with fund managers?
I've been marketing SDB in a different way as a boutique property developer, and I would say we're gaining a fair bit of visibility in that, and we hope to take it further. And we want to stand out as a niche property developer, as someone as someone who were able to basically offer something different compared to the rest of the developers. And really for us, I would say that I take a personal interest in each and every single development. And I make sure that when we do a development, we start from the concept stage. The concept comes from me personally, and then from there, basically, we'll develop other things to reinforce the concept.
Right. You answered this already, that you don't have plans at this point in time to take the company off the board, but at this level, 76 cents odd last traded price yesterday, if you give shareholders, say, a 10% premium, which is kind of like what the old family is doing with OSK properties, you would take the company off the board for just 116 million ringgit. That would be quite cheap for the company and the family to do so. Is that something that has been, being, for example, being explored by your bankers?
We haven't explored that.
Not at all?
No, we haven't.
Have any banks approached you with this idea?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not looking at that.
Not looking at
this
it.
point in time.
Okay. So in terms of running the company, you own 55% of Selangor Dredging. Does liquidity come into the equation when fund managers talk to you about potentially taking some participating in your company?
I mean, at this point in time, fund managers haven't approached us, to take a certain block of us. And at this point in time, it hasn't crossed our mind as well, to do that. We're comfortable where we are at this point in time, and really, I'm looking forward to the next few years.
Okay. As a listed company
as
as
a
well?
listed company,
Okay.
yeah.
You talk about how at all your projects you take a personal interest in. Let's end with this this particular project, Kim, Medan Damansara, or rather Damansara 21. I guess in the wake of Bukit Antarabangsa and the landslides and the hillslope discussion, where is it sitting right now, Damansara 21? What's happening there?
At the moment, with regards to Damansara 21, we have a stop work order from BBKL. We've had this stop work order for 2 years already. And really, we haven't been, because of the residents around there not being happy with the project, we haven't been able to improve on the piece of land. I mean, with regards to Damansara 21, it's a case of that we were actually doing earthworks, and we're trying to do our earthworks and trying to strengthen the whole piece of land, and it's like a case of an open heart surgery left halfway. We've had a stop work order, we haven't been able to proceed, in spite of the government basically giving us approvals that we're allowed to proceed. We've got approvals saying that we're allowed for 21 units. We haven't been able to proceed with that, and then we got slammed with this stop work order, and basically it's been left halfway.
So why doesn't that
to strengthen the piece of land, and
So it actually, Damansara 21's gone from 21 to 19, now 16 apparently, with the new conditions imposed by the government. Yeah. Word has it also that you've taken a filed suit against the government of Malaysia. True or false in the first place, and what is this? What's going on there as well?
We basically have tried to file in a judicial review with the government, and as to basically 16 units, we haven't been formally informed. We were only told through the press. So there's been no formal communication from the government to yourselves. No. Basically, DBKL hasn't informed us that we've had to reduce from 21 to less. And really, we are not filing a suit against the government. We're filing a suit against the decision of...
Essentially saying that they can't change the goalposts.
They can't change the goalposts.
Okay.
Because we've got approvals for 21 units. These are 21 bungalows. And really, when we started work, we followed all the conditions. We were very careful basically halfway through, because of residents' complaint, we have had to stop, and basically the goalpost is changing. So we that's why, you know, so, and like I say, it's the same, like, you know, and we're trying to strengthen the land, and we're trying to basically make sure that it's safe, and in the midst, you know, of strengthening the land, we've been asked to stop.
So with regards to the judicial review, it does seem that you bought the land 6 years ago now. You tried to start working it 4 years ago, and now it's been, you know, it's been scuppered again. What's your frame of mind with regards to Damansara 21 now? Are you going to continue? Are you going to fight the good fight, or might you just, you know, capitulate?
Land in Malaysia, and land in Damansara will always go up. When we first bought the land, I mean, land around there, I would say, built up, I mean, not built up, I would say land is around $400 per square foot. Now it's $1,000 per square foot. Damansara 21 only forms 6 to 8% of our total assets. So from a balance sheet point of view, we're okay to wait. But we hope that the government will find a solution. I mean, we hope that DBKL will find a solution for us. You know?
Okay. At 16 units, does it make sense financially still for SDB to go through with it?
We have, like I said, we haven't really worked out on 16 units. I mean, we got approval for 21, and it hasn't been, DBKL hasn't informed us on.
Okay. Word as well that the firm actually, the company SDB, has sued the 4 office bearers for defamation actually. You know, and of course they respond by saying it amounts to bully tactics. What's going on there as well?
I think the suit is still being heard, if I'm not mistaken.
What was the basis of the defamation, or the alleged defamation?
The basis was that a lot of things were being said about the company that I mean, like defamation suit. I mean, it was defaming the integrity and the credibility of the company, which we felt was not correct. And I mean, SDB has been around since 1964, and we're one of the first few public listed companies, and we've been around for 50 years nearly, and you know, to me, the reputation, the credibility, the integrity of the company is very strong, is very important. And the things that were being mentioned was not right. I mean, was a bit biased. So you know, we had to set it straight.
Okay. Well, Kim, thank you for your time. Good luck with your project in Singapore and London, and of course your bigger plans to go abroad and to test new waters. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.